Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about auto disposition. And thank you, everyone, for attending today. And I have Ben on with me today in the background, who will hopefully be able to field some questions. Are you there, Ben?
I am, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And once again, welcome everyone to the webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on auto disposition. And my name's Rob DaCosta. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that feature today and tell you exactly what it is. So what exactly is auto disposition? Well, auto disposition is an extremely powerful feature that's included in SAFE. Now, there are no additional add-ons or modules to purchase, nothing like that. It's already included in the software. So if you have SAFE, you can turn on auto disposition whenever you would like to. So what exactly is it? Well, auto disposition is a feature that gives administrators the ability to automate to a certain extent the disposition process of cases and items in the system. That is the after Thanksgiving dry turkey version of that. So what exactly is auto disposition? Auto disposition is a great feature in SAFE that's going to help you get rid of your stuff if you don't need it. So what if I told you that we already had a system in place that's going to help you get rid of your old evidence? The system is going to ask the submitting officer or whoever has entered the case, after a certain amount of time, that you, the administrators, set what they would like done with the case and or the matters and the items contained within. Now, this might be a little bit of a change in the way you've always done things, and there might be a little bit of resistance to these ideas at first, but don't let that deter you. Now, I'm going to bring up a graph of one of our clients showing you what they've done with auto dispo. And this graph is from our friends over at the Marion Police Department in Iowa. And we can look at their Oregon versus disposed graph and see that they have taken in, over the course of the last year, month by month, nearly as many things as they've disposed of. So, I mean, there's nearly a 1-to-1 ratio of things that they're taking in versus disposing of. And auto disposition is one of the absolute best ways that we've found that will help you manage your evidence. And at the end of the day, it's extremely effective and efficient. It's effective because how would your world look if you could get rid of 10, 20, maybe even up to 30% of the evidence that you have that you no longer need? How much space in your room would that free up? And you know, that's one of the problems. It seems like items are always coming in. There's never any let up there. And if you don't get rid of at least as much as you take in, then you have to grow your evidence room space for more items. And there's a cost associated with that. Whether it's you're building out, you need more room in the building that you're in, there might be construction costs with that. Or heaven forbid, you have already run out of room in your room and the building, and now you need to look to offsite storage, which, you know, are you going to rent the offsite storage? There's a cost with that. Are you going to build offsite storage? You know, there are HVAC costs involved as well to keep your evidence at a set temperature, or the electrical costs. Using auto disposition can help you save money as well as space. It's very efficient because in most situations, who should know more about the cases or the matters than the people who are entering them? And you know, that's possibly another issue. We've seen a lot of agencies require that the evidence custodians research the cases or matters to figure out what the dispositions are for those cases and the items, when possibly the person who entered those cases or matters might have some helpful insight or know more about them. Now, SAFE automates the process by automatically sending whoever the case or matter entry person is it will send them an email when their case is up for review, asking them what they would like done with the case or the matter and the items. Now, turning on auto disposition is going to affect all of the offices within your organization. And now I'm going to go into my site, and we'll take a look at auto dispo. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to show you regarding auto disposition is I'm going to go into my settings, and then I'm going to go down here to user groups. And I've already have a user group in here. There's a set of detectives, and I'm going to add a user group, and let's call it property and evidence. And these are going to be primarily the administrators, and we'll click OK. And there's my group, and now I want to put some people into that group. So I'll select it and click Edit, and let me add some users. All right.
Now, Rob, are you adding users or administrators? I thought you just said administrators. I just want to confirm I understand what you're talking about there.
These are administrators in the property and evidence group.
Got it. Okay.
They are also users within the system.
You said that. I just wanted to confirm that what you said and what I heard was the same thing.
Very good. Very good. All right. So now I've added a couple people in there. And so that's the first thing that I want to do. The second thing that I want to do is I want to go to permission groups and look at some of the groups who might be involved with auto dispositions. A lot of your users are going to be basic users. And in my system, if I go to permissions and take a look at what permissions a basic user might have, they can view a certain amount of things, create some things such as cases, items, media, etc. When I get down here to auto dispositions, I think I would like basic users. I would like to give them the ability to view auto dispositions, but not necessarily create anything or update or edit anything related to an auto disposition, such as a next review date. Let me go back now to my permission
Real quick,
group.
Rob, I had a question come in. Just can you go back there? Can you tell me what does giving somebody the ability to view auto dispositions, what can they view?
They can view the next review date of the case after it's been entered. And so once a case has been entered, a case or a matter has been entered, based on the number of follow-up days, that case will be assigned a next review date. And allowing a user to view things related to auto dispositions will allow them to be able to view those next review dates.
I got it. So what's going on, just to confirm what I'm thinking here, every case has a review date. That's sort of the essence of auto dispo. Giving somebody those permissions right there allows them to simply see what that date is, but can they manipulate that date? I mean, because my concern would be, what happens if my officers go in and start putting cases 80 years down the road because they don't want to review it?
You know, that would be awesome for them, but unfortunately for them, they can't do that because they can only view things related, such as the next review date, view those things related to auto dispositions. They cannot, for example, update or edit those things because we haven't given them those permissions.
Got it. Okay, now I'm following you.
Versus, you know, perhaps we go to a power user. These might be your supervisors, for example. If we look at their permissions related to auto dispositions, maybe you want a supervisor, maybe you want to give them the ability to not only view, but create and update or edit those next review dates when changes occur or when new information comes in. A basic user might go to their supervisor and say, you know what, instead of reminding me about this next week, can you push that out to 3 months later? In which case the supervisor would be able to go in edit that, and change that next review date. And so now I've set up a couple of my permission groups with some permissions related to auto dispositions. And now I'm going to go into my settings, organization, and the first tab that I'm taken to are my org settings. And let me click on my auto disposition tab and let's take a look. Okay, so the top section, we're going to be coming back to this here shortly. It tells me a little bit about what cases I have open. In this example, I don't have a lot of cases in my org. I only have 8. So there are 8 open, total number of 8 open cases, and a few other things in here that we're going to be talking about here shortly. Now, let me go back in and turn this off. Okay, so this might be what you look at or see when you bring up your auto disposition. And most likely, if you've never used it before, it's off. Now we can see that there are a number of permission groups here that we have given permission to be able to view, create, or update or edit things such as the next review date related to auto dispositions. Now, the first thing we have to do is click edit. And then let's turn auto disposition on by clicking this slider.
So just to confirm, by default, auto dispo is not turned on in somebody's software.
That is correct. You are absolutely right. By default, auto disposition is not turned on. And if you want to use it, you will have to go in and manually do that.
So just as a word of warning, would you suggest if somebody wanted to, should somebody just go in and turn this on? Should they contact you before they do that? When would you suggest somebody turn this on?
I would probably suggest that after you go live in Safe, so right when you first get the software, you're going to be in a trial environment where you're able to enter in as many fictitious cases, persons, and items as you would like to for as long as you would like to. And then when you finally go live, we're going to wipe those out and start you off with a fresh, clean slate. Now, at that point, what I would probably suggest is you let your users have a few weeks to kind of get acclimated to Safe. And then once everyone feels comfortable using Safe, then go in and you may want to consider going in and turning auto disposition on. And once you do that, one of the first things you're going to do after you turn it on is edit the reviewers. And the reviewers are going to be, there are going to be emails sent from the system, and those emails will appear as if they are coming from the reviewers of these cases or matters, which is most likely going to be your admin staff. So you can choose from your different offices what reviewers you would like to have. So instead of the detectives, I'm going to do the property and evidence group, and we'll save that.
So let me make sure I understand what you're saying right there. Is You're telling me that part of auto dispo is sending out notifications about cases being up for review. Is that correct?
That is indeed correct.
And so what you're doing right here is when those emails go out to the case officer, because did you say that is who is the default recipient of the email?
Who the default recipient of the email is the case officer or the case owner, whoever has initially entered that case.
I gotcha. And so on this screen right here, you're suggesting this is who that email is coming from. And so you want it to come from people in property and evidence so that they can respond if they're needed in the task. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay.
And so when we go in and we edit the reviewers, this is where we're going to set that property and evidence group. And we have a couple members in there from our property and evidence group staff. And so I'll save that. And then the next thing that we need to do.
Hey, Rob, who does that go to? If I don't edit the reviewers and I don't put a name in there, does it not work, or what happens if I don't put something in there?
That's a good question. You have to put a name in there.
Okay. So whether
Otherwise,
that's, but I could have put a name of an individual user in there. I saw that you did put a group. I could have
no,
just as easily said, "Hey, it's Beth Bennett that's going to be responding to it."
yeah, sure. You
Right.
can put
Okay, I got you.
you can put in individual users, but I
Yeah.
chose to have a group
Yeah.
because what if Carrie goes on vacation for 2 months to Hawaii? Well, then we added a group in there
Yeah.
so that Beth will be able to get those emails and serve as a
Sure.
backup.
But for the large majority of our clients, they're probably just going to put one individual name in there because it's, if they go on vacation, nobody's doing anything. So that's just the reality of their world. There's only one administrator in the evidence room. The group only applies if you've got multiple people in your room.
That is correct. And yes, by all means, you could change that to individual users, and there's no problem with doing that.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, we'll save that. And now auto disposition is going to be based off of days to follow up on the case offense types that you've chosen. So previously, I went in to my settings and I chose a number of different case offense types. And the case offense types that I chose are shown here: arson, assault, computer crime, etc. And with that, I need to specify how many days to follow up on each one of these different cases, on each one of these different case offense types. So perhaps with arson, let's do 365 days. Maybe we want to do 90 days on an assault, computer crime, 180 days, drug offenses, 30 days. And we go down the list until we've completely filled out all of these follow-up days for across all of the different case offense types. Until you do that, until you assign a follow-up date for each one of these different case offense types, the system will not allow you to save. So you have to fill that out for everything.
So
And
what if
then
I just went in and picked 30 days for everything? What if I literally just said, regardless of the case, I want a 30-day follow-up? What does that matter?
you can do that. And let me save this and I will tell you exactly what's going to happen. So we'll save that. And so let me give you a scenario. And let's just pick a computer crime, for example. And we've chosen to apply 180 days to this. So in this scenario, if someone enters a computer crime type of a case or matter today, 180 days later, the system will automatically send that person an email as if it's coming from the property and evidence group, of which there are 2 members. They're going to send them an email that says, hey, your case or your matter is up for review. What would you like to do with that? And the items contained therein. Now, ideally, that person is going to respond to that email and that task in one of 2 ways. They're going to say something like, you know what, the case, it's done, it's over with. Please dispose of all the items and close out the case. In which case the property and someone in the property and evidence group can do that. Or they're going to say, you know what, this thing hasn't gone to trial yet. Please remind me in another 8 months, at which point in time somebody in the property and evidence group would be able to go in, edit that case, change the next review date to 8 months later, and then 8 months later, the system's automatically going to send that person who entered the case another email, as if it's, once again, coming from the property and evidence group, just saying, hey, your case is up for review again. What would you like to do with the case and or the matter and the items contained therein? Now, all of that is going to tie into your dashboard. And if we go to our dashboard here, and we click on the Add Widget box.
Hey, Rob, if you don't mind, why don't you show entering a case and what does that case review date look like? Because that, I mean, ultimately, that is the bottom line of what we're doing, right? We're creating a case and it's putting a case number in. Can you create, where are you going to create a case, or am I jumping ahead?
Nope, that's all right. We can do that. So we can go over here in your nav menu on the left. We can go to Add a Case. And let's give this a case number. Let's give it yesterday's date. Let's pick from a different offense type. We'll do that computer crime and click next. And a number of things are going to be required in SAFE, and those are going to be shown with a red asterisk. So the first thing we need to do is enter in a case officer or staff or whomever.
Now, the importance of that field is that's who's going to get the email about the case being up for review, right? So that is an important value.
That is extremely important. Whoever is being entered into this case, officer field, is going to receive that email from the system. The next thing we're going to put in is the offense location. Columbus, Ohio. And now we can choose an offense time and date. And we'll first pick the time, then click the date. We can put in an offense description if we would like to. And we see that a review date and review date notes are being applied. Now I can view both of these things because I'm an administrator, but we're also allowing basic users and power users the ability to view these as well. Now the basic users can only view them. The power users would be able to edit them. And after that, you can save and do a number of other things. You can start saving and adding items, adding people, etc.
And so I guess the main thing we wanted to show off here was the fact that that date right there is what, 180 days from today, because we selected 180 days from a computer crime. So that is why that date is showing that. And then ultimately on May the 31st, it's going to send out a notification to, in this case, Carrie Vaughn saying, this case is up for review. What do you want to do with it? So if somebody were to manipulate that date before May 31st, whether they move it up or move it back, it'll change when that notification is going to go out. You know, in some cases, Carrie Vaughn may not be the case officer. Maybe the case officer changes a month after the case is sent out, or whatever case. All you have to do is go in and manipulate the case, edit the case, change the name, change the date, and that will change either who it's going to or the date that it goes out.
That is correct. And a lot of the cases might be reassigned to a detective. Maybe an officer initially enters the case, it gets reassigned to somebody else, etc. Whoever's in that case officer field ultimately is going to be the one receiving those emails from the system. All right, let me just save and view the added case.
So now in reality, what you've done here is you've created a case and there are no items. I mean, presumably some items would eventually get entered. We don't have to do that right now, but this case will still go out for review even if there are no items, because the review date is based on that case information. And so if somebody were to create a case with no items, they would simply get a notification saying, hey, this case is up for review. Somebody would probably point out at that point in time, hey, there's no items, and then you would just close the case out. And closing the case will prevent further notifications from going out.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
All right, so let me go back now to my dashboard. And I'm going to pull up my Oregon versus disposed graph, showing me a little bit about what I've taken in versus disposed of over the course of the last year. Let me also pull up my auto disposition widget. And that's the auto dispo next review date stats widget. And there it is. And this tells me a little bit, this gives me a little bit of information about what's going on with my things related to auto disposition. So within this widget, I can see what cases I have coming up for review over a year out, within the next 3 months to a year, month to 3 months, a week to a month, day to a week. Now, when that next review date hits, whatever day it is today, that is when that email is going to be sent out. Now, if the officers or the agents or whomever does not respond to that email and that task, essentially, and that next review date goes past whatever day it is today, then those cases or matters are going to become past due. And we see that here. Cases or matters that are a date or a month past due or over a month past due. Now, at that point, you may want to hover your mouse over those numbers and click on the number, and SAFE is going to run that search and bring back exactly what those cases are, and tell you who the officer or the agent is who created them. At which point in time you could get with them to figure out what's going on with those cases, whether they need to be put out further down the road and reviewed at a later date, or whether they can be closed, the items disposed of, and the case is closed.
So, hey, Rob, does your menu bar, while you're on that screen right there, does your menu bar show the case review date? I don't see it down there at the bottom. If you scroll, is it over there on the right? Or if not, can you show me how to add it? Because when I come to this screen, I want to, as a matter of fact, you can tell on this screen here right now, it doesn't show the case review date. So this is part of where our customization comes into play, and you can put that on there, even drag it around and put it in that first slot.
That is a great point. So to do that, we're going to click on menu customization, and we're going to start to customize our view. So SAFE is extremely customizable, and you can do a lot with it. So for example, say that I don't want to look at a certain column. Maybe I don't want to look at media or form data. I can click the blue X, and I can get rid of those columns that I don't want to look at and just keep the ones that I do want to look at. And if I click on menu customization and then options, I can now add review date, or I can also take a look at the review date notes. Why don't I add those in there? And now if I scroll to the very right, there are those columns. And as Ben was saying, I don't really want the review date pushed so far over to the right. I want to kind of see when that case is going to be reviewed over here. So I'm going to click that and kind of drag it over. Oh, whoops. All right, my mouse flipped off of there. So let me go back to my case.
I think you were looking at, Rob, go back to your dashboard and scroll down to your Dispo stats and click on that number 3. That's the view you were in a moment ago.
Yeah, I don't remember what that case number was.
That's all right. Now you're going into the view, and now you can start redragging your headers.
All right, so there's that review date. I'm going to click on the header and drag it over here to somewhere around the beginning. And so there you go. So now immediately I can see, okay, there's my case. There's when it's going to be reviewed next, and there you go.
So ultimately, the reason on your dashboard, it showed that there were 3 cases that had a review date of over 31 days ago, and you can see all 3 of those dates are more than 31 days old. And I think the emphasis to point out there, because people, number one, if you're using Auto Dispo within our software, most people in the evidence room, now that you have shifted the onus of reviewing the cases off to the officer, your number 1 priority job in the world is monitoring that widget on the main screen. You don't want to see hundreds and hundreds of cases over 31 days past due. You want to be constantly monitoring that. And so what I would do if I was running the evidence room, almost every day I'd be looking at these cases and I'd be like, why am I not getting a response from the officer? Because what you want to do, like, let's go ahead and click on that number 3, Rob. Let's just say that we get a response from the officer and he says, this case is not going to trial for another year. Well, in that case, all right, great. I don't need any more answers right now. You can view that case and switch the review date to be a year from now. So why don't you just go ahead and do that, Rob? Let's go ahead and view that case and edit it and
Okay,
change that review date to
we'll
be
edit
a
that.
year from now. And I just want to show when you do this, so that's fine, great. Do September 14th of 2021. And so once you save that and go back to your dashboard, so now what you've done, that's all right. We've created a little problem here where switch the case type to something other than alcohol. Just go back up and change it. So the reason this error came up, there you go. Switch it to something you have. Okay. Sorry. I sent Rob way off topic. This is my fault, not Rob's fault. Now we've got it to where it's saved. Go back and refresh that dashboard widget, and you'll see that your past due cases are not 3, but it's now 2 because you kicked that date down the road. And so this is ultimately, as an evidence administrator, this is what your job is once you implement this. You want these numbers down because what we traditionally see is that the more out of control these get, when it starts to get to where you've got 50, 100, 500 cases that are past due, you're so overwhelmed with them. It's like, what's the purpose of this? So I think Rob's going to get into maybe a little bit how we distribute these out very slowly to begin with. But if not, that's important to note. We don't just flip this switch on and then people are drinking from a fire hose. We send them out gradually so that people are getting introduced to the idea of, hey, you're going to get an email with a notification about this case coming up. We don't want them drinking from a fire hose because if that happens, they get overwhelmed, they stop using it. And so these things are going to trickle out for not only their benefit, but your benefit as the evidence administrator. You've got to keep on top of these things because if you don't, everybody gets overwhelmed and then auto dispo falls apart. Sorry, Rob, I just took over there. Sorry about that.
No, that's a great point. And the other part to that is there's another way you can use auto disposition. If you don't, a lot of people don't want these emails going out to the officers, or the agents. They think they may become, overwhelmed with them. So why not use this system as a reminder? In the top section here, you can, in the section here, you can see what cases you have coming up for review. And in the same way that we clicked on the cases that were past due, we can do that with the cases that are coming up for review. We see that we have something coming up for review here within the next week. We'll click on the number 1. It's going to bring up that case, tell us exactly who the agent or the officer is regarding that case. And we can get with that person directly at that point in time to figure out the disposition of the case and the items. And we're doing that on the front side before, if we go back to that widget now, we're doing that before that next review date becomes whatever day it is today. And when we do these things ahead of time, before that next review date changes to whatever day it is today, then those people on the officers are never going to get an email. And you can use this as a reminder system to take care of things that are coming up on the front side. Now,
that's interesting you say that, Rob. I've never thought about or suggested using it in that way, but that is a great way because, like, for example, some of these older cases, you may want to get that stuff flushed out of the system before the review goes out. So by doing it that way, you're sort of one step ahead of the officer. But just keep in mind, that may not be the traditional use where, you want the system to automatically notify the officer. But I do like that concept right there.
Yep, it's definitely an alternative way to use our auto dispo feature. And so the other part of auto disposition, if we go back into our settings organization auto dispo tab, is now let's talk about this top section that we just kind of glanced over. And the top section is showing us the total number of open cases that we have. Now, I'd like to start by recalculating how many cases we can dispose of. And I'll explain that after I click on this button, click on this field. So I clicked on the recalculate cases to dispose, and safe comes up and tells me that I can close 3 cases out. Now,
Now, why? Explain to me real quick. Why can I close out those 3 cases? Why did that just tell me that?
Okay, well, I'm going to click on the close 3 cases, and here's a list of everything that's can be closed. Now, safe told me that because those 3 cases have certain attributes, and all of those cases either have absolutely no items in them, or every single one of the items in all 3 of those cases have already been disposed of. So we can close those cases. So now what happens when you close a case? Well, let me go into a case and I'll show you. When you close a case, let's go to edit. And we're just going to pretend for the sake of argument that there are either no items in this case or all the items have already been disposed of. So when you go to close a case, if you're doing this manually, you could click edit and go to the top and change the status slider from open to closed. Now it's popping up and giving me an alert that there are undisposed, we're closing a case with undisposed items. Are you sure you want to proceed? We'll just click yes.
Right, because you can pretend that there are no items that are not validated there, but the software is in the real world, and it's going to force it to where it's going to notify you if you're trying to close a case that has open items in it, because generally you don't want to close a case that has valid items in it. So just keep that in mind. That error there is there for a very good reason.
Yep, that is correct. So we'll change the status to closed. And now we'll just, let's see here. So, we'll put in a closed date. And now I'll click save. And now a few things have happened. And now the only things that happen when you close a case are the status will move. The slider is going to move from open to closed. The blue power icon for the case is going to turn red, visually showing you that the case has been closed. And then that case is going to be taken out of your total open case count. So if we go back into settings, organization, and look at auto dispo now, my total.
And while you're doing that, I will say the importance of closing a case. The minute you do that, it will no longer send out notifications about that case being up for review.
That is correct. And my total open case count moved from 9 to 8 because we closed that case. And if I recalculate the cases to dispose, that should remain at 3. Let's close out those cases. I'll click on the close cases field. There are my cases. I can click on any of those and it will bring up a little bit of information regarding that case if I want to review that. But I'm just going to go ahead and click on the close date calendar icon here and choose today's date. I'll go with the default time and click close cases.
Now, I want to throw out to everybody the importance of what Rob is doing there, and you can recalculate that when you're done. There is no other way in our software to know all the cases that are available to be closed, and you don't want to have to search these one at a time. This area was designed to be used in conjunction with auto dispo, because largely if you're not using auto dispo, it doesn't really matter if the case is closed in our software or not. It only matters when it comes to auto dispo. That's why that feature is there, because we don't want notifications to go out for cases that should be closed. That's why that's one of the default setup steps.
So now if I recalculate my cases to dispose, that should show 0, and it does, because we just closed all 3 of those cases. And if I refresh my screen now, I should have a total open case count of 5. And let's go back to auto dispo, and there it is.
What will be interesting, Rob, is when you go back to the other system you were using to go in and look at these stats and see if they have any that are available to be closed. It just would be interesting to know. We can do that later.
Okay. All right. So now we've closed a number of cases, and now Safe is giving me some information up here at the top, telling me how many cases don't have a review date, or some things are past due, or some cases have an upcoming review date.
How would you have, Rob? How would you have a case without a review date? How does that even happen?
Okay, well, that is a great question. And when you have a number of you might have a data import, and so cases might be imported into the system before auto disposition has ever been turned on. So that is how you might have no review date, because no review date was ever applied to those cases that were imported. So
And I
what
would
can
say even more commonly, every case you create before turning on auto dispo. So for everybody on the phone here today that's already a Safe client that's entering cases but not using auto dispo, every case you enter does not have a review date, and so they're going to pop up in that area.
that is very true. And so what can you do about that with all of those cases that don't have any review date, that were either imported or that were entered before the system was ever turned on? Well, you can redistribute those cases over a certain date range if you would like to. So if you click on that, the redistribute case review dates field, let's look at cases with no date. Or you could look at things that are past due or upcoming or everything. We're
Now,
just
what?
going
Let me just restate that right there. What's actually happening right there is if you mass update the cases that are, if you select no date, you're only mass updating cases that don't have a date applied. Or you can go in and say, you know what, I just want to update things that the date is past due. Because what if you are using auto dispo? Let's go back to that scenario I threw out a minute ago. I've been using auto dispo. I'm so overwhelmed. I've gotten behind on this thing, and I want to reorganize every case to be in the future that's currently in the past. Well, by selecting past due right there, you're just applying the variables on this screen to that. Now, if you happen to be a client that you've never turned auto dispo on, we may just select that all button up there, because what we're going to do with that is we're going to say every case in the system, I want to reorganize the date over whatever range Rob is about to fill into that box.
great point. And for this example, I'm just going to go with cases with no review date. And for argument's sake, if we had 365 cases, we could distribute those cases between a date range. And why don't we just pick today's date? And let's do a year from now. All right, we can add some review date notes if we would like to.
Now, just keep in mind what he's doing right there is we're just applying a note to all of these cases. So I would say, Rob, that note would probably far more likely be, hey, I'm kicking this out to a future date. That's why we're redoing these dates, something to that effect. Or, even what you put there is fine.
Yep, you can put in whatever note you would like to go to the person who entered the case officer. And you can also order these by update these in order by offense date if you would like to. If you turn that on, if you do that in ascending order, that would allow you to update the oldest cases first. And in this scenario, if, for example, you had 365 cases with no date, once you click update cases, that is going to apply a next review date for all of those cases and distribute them between this date range. And if you have 365 cases, you would probably have one case that's up for review every day, Sunday through Saturday, over the course of the next year. So one officer, for example, might receive an email every day of the year letting them know that their case is up for review. And the flip side of that is when they respond, the evidence custodians, evidence personnel might receive one email per day telling them what they would like done with the case and the items contained therein.
Now, in reality, one of the things to throw in here, a lot of our clients have more than 365 cases. So there is an art to picking that date range. You don't want to make it, let's say you had 1,000 cases that were active in your system. You wouldn't pick a 10-year range of time on that. I mean, that's way too few cases going out. But if you were a client that had 100,000 cases to be reviewed, you'd be insane to pick a 1-year date range on that, because that means you'd have, I don't know the math, I'd have to, it'd be a lot of cases going out every day to be reviewed on top of all the new stuff going in. So there is a bit of an art to figuring out what that date range should be. You don't want it to be too much, you don't want it to be too little.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. For example, as Ben said, if you have 1,000 cases, you don't want to distribute them in the next 2 weeks, because that's going to just be overwhelming for everyone to deal with, not only the officers, but the evidence personnel as well. So there definitely is an art to distributing the cases over a certain date range, depending on how much staff you have to deal with that. And once you get that, once you get all that filled out, you can click update cases, and it will apply those dates. And let me refresh this, and that no review date should go to 0 because we've applied a date to that case. And there it is. So now I have no cases with no review date. And now I can, if there are cases that are past due, I can either go into those cases via the widget if there are just a few of them. Although if there are hundreds or thousands of them, maybe you want to reassign or reapply a next review date to those past due cases. You would do the same thing. You could redistribute those cases over a date range. Just click the past due field to redistribute those past due cases and go from there.
I feel an overwhelming sense to point out to everybody, there's quite a few people on here watching this, and invariably there's one person that's overwhelmed with what we're talking about. There is a lot going on this screen, and just auto dispo in general. So for anybody that may feel overwhelmed, let me share a confidence builder with you, okay? I do not expect very many people to just go in and turn this on and run with it. Okay. I think the importance of today is that you vaguely understand what is possible, and then you'll call us up and say, hey, I'd really like to do this thing, but all those buttons you were clicking in the redistribution and the closing cases, like I didn't catch any of that. Can you help me? And that's where Rob, Beth, Carrie, anybody on our implementation team would walk you through this. Our goal is to help you get this thing turned on, not that today was like, oh yeah, just take it and run with it. So if you do feel overwhelmed, don't worry, let us know and we will help walk you through this, because very few people are going to just take this and run with it and understand it. And we don't want you to get a sense that is that way.
Absolutely, yeah. When anyone is ready to implement this, please let us know, and we are going to be more than happy to walk you through it. We'll be there with you every step of the way. It's no big deal for us to explain this to you over again. One-on-one session, it's no big deal, and we are more than happy to do that for you.
So Rob, as you're wrapping up here, can we hop back into that other organization? I'd like to, now that we have a better understanding of the stats widget and some of the stuff on this screen, I'd like to just look at okay, so it's Marion, Iowa. If you're on here, thank you for allowing us to use your site today. But looking at their auto dispo stats, let's just scroll down there and look at what their statistics look like. So for this organization, they have just over 6,200 total cases, but look at this. That's unbelievable. I mean, what's that? Almost 80% of all of their cases are closed. I mean, so 5,053 right below that are closed. Now, as I look at the stats below that, they've got 145 cases that are over 30 days past due for review. And, that's 10% of all of their active cases. So my assumption would be, if they're watching here, that there's probably a reason that is that way and they are being reviewed. But again, you get a sense of, there are 145 cases way past due, 37 that have just rolled past due, and there's one case that did come up for review today. And then you can see these are real world statistics of what this looks like. Now, I guess, Rob, the part we did not get into is showing tasking off. So we've spent, you and I have been doing so much talking here today, I forgot. Was that on your list of to-dos?
You know what? I know it wasn't.
Okay, well, that's all right. Let's do this, and I'll let you show that off when we end it. Let's go into the settings and look at the auto dispo, and let's just see, in this organization, go to settings org. I just want to look at this real quick, and go to auto dispo.
All right, hang on. We flipped it to somebody else.
Oh yeah, you flipped the organization. Good job. There you go. You did that so quick, I didn't even see you do it.
Neither did I.
Okay, so let's, for this police department, here's another look at this. Let's recalculate that, because it looks like the last time it was run was almost a year ago. So let's see how many cases they have. Presumably this is going to go fairly quick. Right now, Marion has 28 cases. I mean, first of all, 80% of all their cases have already been closed, but they've got another 28 cases that could be closed out. Now, Rob and I are not going to go in and close those for them, as much as I would love to do it and see what that does to those past due cases. If Marion is on here, go in and close those cases. That's 28 cases that don't need to be reviewed. It'd be really cool if those were a big chunk of your past due cases. So anyways, it's interesting to see that. Yeah, so, and we can see, I mean, there's all their setup, and it looks like most of their cases are getting a 1-year review date. So, all right. So the one, Rob, the one thing I would like to end on here is showing off the tasking. I mean, the whole purpose of this system is not only to turn on auto dispo and to have it send notifications, but the way it goes about doing that is tasking. So let's flip back into your organization, and why don't you just quickly run through creating a task? Let's just create a blank task.
All right.
And
let's go into tasks.
Yep.
And I actually have one in here for a case review, but let's start from scratch. Let's go to add a task. And now auto dispo is going to be doing this automatically. So this is not something that you would have to do manually. Let's click add a task, and we'll give it a title.
So while Rob's filling this out, just as an FYI, a task is like submitting an email to somebody, but you're not doing it via email, because the problem with email is it's not trackable. There's no way for our software to know that that email was sent. So by doing the tasking inside of here, it's like sending them an email, but it's reviewable within our software. So forever and amen, this task will always be in the software. And so instead of conversing with somebody via email, you know how that goes back and forth. And then 5 years from now, when it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and you can't find those emails, by doing tasking in our software, all of that communication is being recorded inside of here, so that 5 years from now, I know, hey, here is the request that went out to you, and here's where you told me to do whatever this thing may be.
All right, here's my task. I'll save it. And there it is. So if I open up the task and click on the details now, I can see kind of what's going on with the task. And there's the title, please review. There's a message that is going to be sent when auto dispo has been turned on. This message is going to read something like, please review this case and let us know what you would like done with it. There's who it's assigned to, what objects such as the case have been linked to it. And at this point, the person who received the task, which would be the case officer, can go down here in the add note field and add a note to this task. And we'll add that note. And that response is going to be sent back to the property and evidence group, of which there are 2 members, letting them know what this user would like done with the case and the items. And it's very efficient that way,
So in
because
a much larger sense, I guess what I want to throw out here is, in a much larger sense, the system is automatically sending out this notification. All of your communication with that officer should be taking place inside the software where all of this communication is being recorded. So that officer, if this is all done properly, they will respond to this task and tell you what to do. And then you will simply go in and say, you know what? I want to kick the date down the road, or maybe I dispose of all my evidence or prep it for disposition at this point.
That is correct. And if you ever need to review those tasks, you can just go into your case, go to the tasks tab, and there it is. You can close out these tasks, but you can never delete them. So if you ever need to go back and refer to any of these things at some future date, you can always do that because they're all saved in the system. And that is a little bit on auto disposition. Ben, do you have anything to add to that today?
I think that was a lot on auto disposition. So I don't think anybody watching that is like, wow, that was just a little bit. That feels like a lot. But I would, and I have to drop off of here, but I would say, I believe that for any of our clients, the singular most important thing you can use our software for is this auto dispo. So I hope today was a bit of a rallying cry as to what is possible, because when you implement this, it has the ability to have the singular greatest impact on your organization when it comes to evidence disposal and getting rid of things. We see, by and large, clients of ours that have implemented it, their graphs look way better. They're disposing of more evidence than they're bringing in. The people that are not doing so well, largely, they're not using auto dispo. And so, I don't want to say that blindly, because that's not true in every case, but by and large, we see that being true.
And as Ben said earlier, please, when you're ready to turn this on, we are more than happy to help. Please give us a call over in support and implementation and let us know. And we are, once again, we are more than happy to walk you through this if you need help. And it's no problem at all.
Okay, I have to go, Rob, but thanks for allowing me to be a part of this. If you've got anything else to say, I'll let you finish it out. If not, it's
that is it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the webinar. I hope it was a very informative session for you. If you need anything from us, once again, we're more than happy to help. We're here for you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.